All right, Kevin, back with you for another episode of the $1 Million Relationships Podcast. And today I'm here with Chance McClain. Chance, welcome. So awesome to have you on the show, man.
Good to be with you, Kevin. So good.
I've been looking forward to this. And I want to start off by giving a shout out to Brianna over at the Interview Valet platform. I did a interview with Tom, the founder of Interview Valet, probably about a year and a half ago. And ever since then, I got connected with Brianna through that process. And now Brianna reaches out to me, I don't know, maybe once a month or so, and just says, "Hey, Kev, here's one person or here's two people that I think would be really great guests for your podcast. And why don't you take a look at them and let me know what you think?" And that's how you and I met, Chance.
Yeah.
Because Brianna has I love who Brianna is and how she shows up, and she's just really helpful and all that. And she has introduced me to some really awesome people, you being one of them. And we already got to have a conversation, you and I did, and I got to find out about what you were doing. And man, I was totally stoked to have this conversation with you. and so,
Likewise.
and,
Likewise.
and so, so we'll dig right in here, and I'm just going to throw it out there in a broad scope because I'm going to let you then choose kind of just what feels right for you to share, and we're just going to have a heart-to-heart conversation. But I want you to be able to share, talk about what you do because you have a gift. You have a gift for sure, and so I want you to be able to talk a little bit about what you do and who you serve, and of course, what inspires you to do what you do, because
Mm.
there's some definite inspiration behind this too, and also give folks some of your backstory as well.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Well, oh gosh, what do I do? My company, we make documentary films like you would see on Netflix or HBO docs. So the nicer, prettier, more beautiful docs, but where the audience is controlled. It's your family or your people. You choose who it is. And so generally speaking, people around my age call me and say, "My dad is awesome," or "My mother is amazing. And I want her life story and her values and her principles. I want those crystallized and I want them put into the format of a documentary film so that my kids, my grandkids, my future great grandkids, and so on, people forever in my family will at least get to know from this point on who they are and where they come from." And that's what Heritage Films does. And boy, that takes a whole lot of different. It has a lot of different faces of what that looks like. But if we play with the Pareto principle, 80% of the time it's what I just said. It's somebody contacting me because there's an older person in their life that's profoundly important to them, and they feel like this is a way. Forever I thought it was the stories being passed down, the anecdotes. And
Okay.
only after doing hundreds of films did I realize that people want the values passed down more than the stories. The stories are great, don't get me wrong. The stories are awesome, but buried in every story is a character or a character trait of a person that made certain decisions and learned certain things. And what it really is I think that the people that were born before me were doing something more right than I did. I'm trying, but I'm human. I'm screwing it up. Man, I just would love to be able to take a lot of what they're doing so that my kids can maybe learn from them. And maybe my kids are too narcissistic right now to go sit down and talk to Papa. But I bet they'll watch a damn movie.
Mhm.
And so that's what we do. We definitely use the same type of equipment. I mean, the exact same equipment that you would use for, Hollywood documentaries, but our process is very far removed from theirs. We absolutely, like you just said, you told me before we rolled that this isn't an interview, this is a conversation. And you do a great job of doing that. You do make it an alive conversation. You didn't send me questions beforehand for me to study. No, that's our same approach. I have them fill out some forms so I know enough to be dangerous. I know, we have different family members tell me what they love about the person or aspects of their life that they love for them to visit. But I come in with just enough info to be dangerous, and we plop down and just chit chat, just start talking. And there's a lot of structure in my head, but hopefully it doesn't feel like structure to them, because we really do just visit about what they know about their past before they're born, their parents, how their parents met, their grandparents, how the family, how the property ended up in the family, right? All these different types of things that may be a part of their family.
Yeah.
Then childhood, school years, meeting their husband, meeting their wife, having kids, starting a family, starting a career, starting a business. Over 500 films of people that were just started businesses. Like I've talked to, I have this front row seat to the entrepreneurs of the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s of what it took to, and it's just this information piling into my head. Like 50 films in, here I am asking, what's the secret to a good business? How you raise these kids that love you so much, they're making a movie about you. What is it? Like, how do I do that? And I started trying to apply some of the things these people were telling me they did for their family. Just tremendous difference in my life as a guy. Just try to be a better dad, better husband, better beer buddy, everything.
Yeah.
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 Wow.
Wow.
I'm rambling, but I love what I
No,
do.
this is awesome. So now you got me thinking because, I'm an entrepreneur. I've been an entrepreneur since I started my very first company in 1995. So it's been 30 years I've been an entrepreneur.
Whoa.
And, I'm so you mentioned you've done a bunch of these for people that were entrepreneurs and business owners
Oh,
too and stuff.
oh my gosh, so many. Like I said, most of the films come from entrepreneur parents or man, you got to think about, we've really embraced the word entrepreneur since about that era that you said, the mid
Yeah.
90s. Before that, it was just a business owner. They just called them business owners. And now I think of the word entrepreneur like you, like me. It's easier said unemployable. Like I want to be useful to society, but I'm a crappy employee. So we gotta forge our own ways. And a lot of these guys are that way too. Ladies as well. Lot of fascinating stories out there. It's just a little old lady down the street, but I promise you, man, you just start visiting with her. There's richness there.
Yeah. Yeah. And I, c- I just, I see so many entrepreneurs and like myself included that I'm kind of not the best at necessarily telling my own story. Other
Mm.
people, and I mean, heck, even the entrepreneurs that I serve, they do some absolutely amazing things. They're making a huge impact in the world. What I have discovered over the years is that the entrepreneurs who are doing the biggest stuff, making the biggest impact, are also the most humble ones too.
Oh yeah. Oh.
That they just don't talk about. I mean, I know that I have friends that are clients and that they have done amazing things and they won't talk about it because, well, that might come across as bragging and I don't want to do
Mm.
that. And I'm like, well, I'll talk about that for you on your behalf because it'll get the right people saying, man, Kim, yeah, I want to talk with them. You know?
Yeah, I found that you're 100% correct that humility is almost a part of the DNA
Yeah.
for so many of these people, and it's a part of what makes them. And there it's you almost can't separate it. And for me, it's a hurdle because when their son comes to them and says, "Hey, Dad, I hired this guy, this company, and they're going to come have you tell your story." The immediate response is invariably, "No, I'm not doing that. That's
Yeah.
that's stupid. No." But then once they understand, basically once they wish they had this of their dad or their grandpa, and they realize, oh, this is an act of service I'm doing for my grandkids. And you know what? The more I think about it, this next generation is completely screwed up. I can't wait to do it. And then they start to share their values and their history and what all happened. And man, 5 minutes in, they forget the cameras. They forget the cameras are there, and we're just talking. Sorry, this is so unprofessional. This book is my whole company.
Yeah.
This is my company. It's ask short questions with long answers, find common ground. All the tips in here are what we do. And people do, even the shyest, most introverted, most humble person, they do want to talk about themselves whenever there's an authentic curiosity coming at them with a real purpose.
Yeah.
There's no chit chat. There's no how's the weather. There's no did you see what who should I pick? Did you see what the Seahawks did last night? A little respect for you. There's none of that. It's all this super important stuff. And by the way, we don't do anything that isn't right there for the taking at any time. We just do it in a distilled, concentrated, high gravity moment all over the course of a couple days, depending on what they do, a day or two or five. And there's highly concentrated. But man, it's when they're multi-day shoots, the second day is easier for them than the first day. All of the nervousness it's all, oh, I thought last night, you know what? And they start thinking about things that will be useful for their kids, grandkids, and progeny. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
it's pretty sweet.
Wow. Well, and I'll tell you, there's no hiding your passion for this.
There's not. Man, oh, gosh, my background, dude. Oh, holy crap.
Yeah.
I
How'd
don't
you
even
get
know.
into doing this?
Man, the short version is a buddy of mine asked me to film his dad. And
Okay.
I was doing video stuff. I was doing TV commercials and internet videos. And he asked me to film his dad. And that's the short version. But if you rewind it further than that, I spent a decade in sports radio. I spent 4 years in the United States Army. I spent about 4 or 5 years in various sales jobs, industrial sales, downhole oil field sales, uniform sales. Um, I wrote a off-Broadway musical, so I've got some artistic chops in there. Um, I have all these different things that these weren't gigs, dude. These were like careers. These were like, I am doing this. I was a rapper. I was a musician. And I left the corporate world to go try to make it in music. And I just face planted, but I tried that. And there's all these different things in these, call it 3 to 5 year chunks of life where where I had these careers, and then it would just take these wild left turns, and now I'm into something totally different, and none of them made sense.
Okay.
Like nothing made sense, and yet here I am. I've been doing this for more than 10 years, and dude, I feel like I haven't started. I feel as eager when I knock on the door after doing it more than 800 times. I want to get so much better.
Yeah.
I want to get so much more connection with the person I'm talking to. I want my client, the families, to be so much happier today than they were yesterday, and freaking incalculably more than 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And I think that's how you know you're on the right path. And by the way, I couldn't do what I'm doing now without all those weird Broadway and sports and working for the Texans, and like without all that stuff in my background, I don't think I would have the range to
Yeah.
do what I do now effectively.
Yeah. Yeah. It's all that stuff that just combined is what got us to where we are right here, right now, you know.
That's it. Hmm.
And yeah, it all played a role.
One of the one
And
of the one of the little rules that I've come out with, which you can hear if you do any time, spend any time on business podcasts or self-improvement stuff. Um, they're all those lessons, they're all real. Just assume whatever you're listening to is real and roll with it. But embracing failure as a stepping stone, good Lord, forever when I would fail, or I would, I did an off-Broadway musical and it just got murdered. I mean, they thought it sucked, but I did it. It was awesome for me. It's like, what the hell am I doing there? Um, that was a failure, and I felt it. I felt, holy crap! I thought this was going to be something I would be good at and do, um, but it wasn't. You can only look back and see that it was essential for me. That wasn't my path. It was never my path, but I needed to go through it so that I have now when I'm talking to some super duper artsy fartsy lady in Seattle, I have authentic connection. Like, man, totally. I respect it. I love that stuff. And I can authentically do it. I've been there. So embracing failure as a stepping stone has been a big, big key to what we're doing.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Wow.
Yeah,
Well,
it's pretty good.
yeah, this is really good. So, okay, so now that we've got a little bit of context here,
Hmm.
I'm going to switch gears just a little bit. I'm going to reiterate the question around relationships for the benefit of our listeners. So, Chance, have you ever been introduced to a person or persons who completely changed the course of your life or your business, so much so that much of what you have today would not be possible if not for this person or persons? And
Yeah.
I'm just really stoked to hear your experience around this topic of relationships.
Gosh, when we spoke a few weeks ago, I was so excited to talk to you because you've heard it a thousand times. There is no Heritage Films without all these people. It's my company, it's my face, but it's nothing. And I don't just mean my staff, my team, my guys. I mean these other random people from throughout my life that there would be nothing. I don't know what the hell I'd be doing. It's terrifying to think what I'd be doing. Um, there's a couple that I'm talking about since I've been doing the Heritage Films,
Okay.
and I'll share you, if I may, a gentleman named Jacko. What a name, right? Jacko Garrett. Jacko's grandson hired me. He called me up in August and said, "Hey, we got to film my papa. He's got stage 4 cancer in a bunch of different places in his body, and his doctor said he ain't seeing Christmas. They've already taken him off. He's not on chemo anymore. He's not on radiation. He's not on anything." He was a devoutly Catholic guy, and I'm a Protestant dude, but I care less. I mean that I get along with everybody. But so I'm like, yeah, he's a farmer, and I'm like, okay, cool. We've done lots of farmer. Yeah, sure. So we get it set up. We obviously had to accelerate all of our getting on the calendar and all that stuff. But within about 2 weeks, I'm at Jacko's farm, and it ended up being a giant, like 5,000 acres. It was a huge
Wow.
operation, global operation. Still a farmer though, and immediate connection with Mr. Garrett. He's asked. I'm here to interview him because he's dying, and he's asking me about my business and about my family and about my philosophies. And I'm like, Jacko, we're here to talk about you, sir. Can we turn the tables? So it was a 3-day production, and within the first day, I already wished that I'd met him 20 years before. Just one of those guys that was there to solve your problems for real or help you solve them. Like he would never solve problem. God, there's so much I want to tell you about him. I'll tell you one specific story where he's a farmer, so he gets up at 5 o'clock in the morning, and we had talked about it. We were actually talking about his wife, who a period of his life where his wife was dying of cancer, and she was in a bad place, and so she's a farmer's wife, so she had the crap she had to do in the morning too. So instead of getting up at 5 in the morning, Jacko found himself for a period of months and months and months getting up at 3 in the morning to go take care of his wife's stuff and then take care of his stuff. And the cameras aren't even rolling. He's sitting on his iPhone, and he tells me he's getting up at 3. And I said, "Man, Jacko, that must have been hard." And he's like, "What does hard have to do with anything? What does hard have to do with anything?" And I'm like, "Well, I just mean, you had to get up so early. You must have just been tired. What does being tired have to do with anything?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm trying to be respectful." Like he says, he goes, "Man, those are just complaints. I'm not going to complain to you. I'm not hard and tired." And the other one was busy. Those are just little adjectives we use that are little complaints. Chance, you got to try to never complain. Never tell somebody something's hard. You share that with your wife. Never tell somebody you're tired, no matter how tired you are. Let your wife know when you're tired. If it's unsafe to drive, let somebody that isn't. But don't spread complaints into the universe.
Mm.
And
Wow.
and man, I took that to heart, and I struggle to this day to never say I'm tired, never say something's hard. It doesn't matter. And then the busy one was he on day 2. He said, "How you doing?" I said, "Man, doing great, dude. Just busy." He goes, "Don't you own your own company?" I said, "Yes, sir." He's like, "Well, then busy. So that's a good thing, right?" I said, "Well, yeah, I guess it is." So Jacko, this was all in August. Hopefully that you see that's the type of guy he was. Just advice, guidance, thoughtfulness. Um, he he lived to watch his film. He beat the cancer without medicine. He beat
Wow.
it. He beat it with I don't know, with prayer and obstinance. And he ended up living for 5 more years. He died of something totally different. He died last summer. And I went to the funeral, and it was he over those 5 years he turned into a mentor. He turned into somebody that I would call here as a farmer, and I would call about anything, tech, questions, personalities, employees, anything. And he would have guidance for me. He would call me out of the blue. How are your numbers this month? Hey, Jacko. And he always knew exactly why. How are sales? Well, they're down a little bit. So you're not working hard, huh? I said, well, he was just Jacko Garrett. Rest in peace. He is a stud, man.
Wow, that's awesome. And
Yeah.
he became
And
a mentor to you
100%.
through that process too. Yeah.
And to bring the story full circle, his grandson Garrett, we're working with Garrett right now
Oh,
because
wow.
Garrett took over the farm, and we launched farmandranchfilms.com. So many of our films have an agrarian edge to them. Basically, think of it as a heritage film, but where the land is a character in the movie.
Okay.
That's a farm and ranch film. So we have lots of ranchers, lots of farmers. We're up in your area. We've done timber farming, just lots of different things. Well, we're now doing a farm and ranch film on Garrett Farms with the grandson as our principal in it, and it's
Wow.
now Garrett's a friend. Now
Yeah.
he's completely a confidant, a friend. Here, this kid is probably 32, and in some ways, he's a mentor to me. Farmers are different, Kevin. I'm sure you know that. There's a hardiness. There's that whole nothing is hard. I'm never tired.
Resourceful. That's what, see,
Resourceful.
I grew up working on a 360 acre crop farm.
You
And
get it.
yeah,
You get
and
it.
you know what, what you're sharing just hits home so much because I grew up working on that farm. I was driving truck with loads of flats of berries to the cannery when I was 14 years old. I was driving
Yeah.
truck to the cannery and stuff, you know. And
Yes.
and the whole get up at 5, that was our routine, especially because right now, actually right now is berry season. That is their
Hmm.
busy time of year. And when my buddy Gary and we worked for his mom and dad, Mike and Diana owned the farm, and Gary and I worked for them. And during berry season, we would be to work at 5 a.m. and we would probably not get done till between 7 and 8 at night. And that was 7 days a week during berry season. There's no time off in berry season. And now, all these years later, Mike and Diana, they're still alive, but for the most part, they're mostly retired. They come around the farm and stuff. But my friend, their son, Gary, is now running the whole
Oh,
operation. Him and his wife are running the whole operation. And my son, Brock, who is 17 years old, just got his first job and he is working on that farm.
hell yeah.
And he loves that job. And in fact, I just put a post, or actually, I guess it was my wife put a post up a week or two ago. She had been out to the farm to go pick some berries, and Brock was there, and she got a couple of pictures, and she posted on Facebook how much Brock loves working at the farm. And Gary's wife posted how much we love having Brock work for us. you know, and
Man,
it is
I,
so
I
cool.
I could talk to you forever about the importance of people that of farmers and ranchers, and they solve such bigger problems. I'll give you one closer to your neck of the woods that we did that I learned about. It was a timber family. Um, they were actually in Northern California, but it's all Pacific Northwest. They were all up there somewhere, and their family had been in timber since the 1860s, and they started off in the Midwest and made their way across the north. They Oregon trailed across, ended up over out that way. Um, but they talked about you plant something that, with a 40-year gestation cycle. So your certain trees, they don't mature for 40 years. And here's a 80-year-old person planting it, right? The type of patience that's required, the type of and when you lose a part of a crop to a fire or something, how devastating that is. And yet it's these farmers, they know it's going to happen. It's part of the deal. They can deal with such tougher things. They're sturdier people at a constitutional level. And that's why I say that Garrett, even though he's 20 years my junior, I learned from him, man. This dude, he does things that are that are physically rigorous for 15 hours a day during certain seasons,
Yeah.
and the way they have to think and get creative to diversify. They just lost a 3,000 acre lease to solar. It's been in their family since 1938, and he's like, shoot.
Wow.
So he pivoted to embryo transfers and AI stuff for the cattle operation. And I'm talking high tech. There's sciencey crap going on here, and yet he's just a farmer with a really slow accent and all that. Don't let it fool you, man.
Yeah. Yeah. They are so resourceful. And I mean, I remember how, piece of equipment breaks down, or a tractor breaks down, or a tractor hits a spring out in the middle of the field, in the middle, uh, after midnight, pitch black dark, and you got to plant so many acres of peas, because when they come to harvest, they harvest so many acres every day. So you got to stay on schedule during planting time, and you're out there planting, and all of a sudden you hit a spring and your front end of that tractor is buried and you ain't going nowhere. But you know what? You got to get that tractor out
That's
there
right.
because you got peas to plant.
It's the Jacko advice. That's why when I said it must have been hard to him, hard, what the hell are you talking about? Hard is not an impediment to progress. It's a
Yeah.
part of it.
Yeah.
You got to be resourceful. You got to get
Yeah.
around it. You got to figure it out, dude.
Yeah.
And I think us city folks could learn. Or I'm more of a suburb guy, but I think we could all learn from that class of people. I really
Yeah.
do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll share with you another fella.
Yes.
You asked me about the relationships. There's another man. This is much more recent, um, but he was in Western Pennsylvania, up in a little town called Du Bois, and he had been very successful in life, self-made, but boy, did he make it. He did really well for himself in the uniform business. And when I said I had various jobs in my youth, one of them was route sales for a uniform company for G&K Services. And and this guy hired us. He was telling his own story for his kids, and he had been married 4 or 5 times. Kind of playboy in the 80s, lots of fun in the 80s, very driven, very successful at business. And he too had some medical scares that he was going through, is going through. Um, Not all the films are that, but these two are. But we did his film, and it came out great. And he looked at me when we were wrapping up, and he said, "I like you, and I think you have something really, really incredible here. I just think that you're probably a bad businessman." Okay, I've just met this dude. We went up twice, but he told me that bluntly. He just could see it. He's like, "You're so passionate about what you do, but boy, I bet your books are a mess." And I was like, I have some opportunities there. My wife, we're never late on our bills, and he's like, "Well, listen, why don't you get back to Texas, get settled in, and give me a call, and I want to share some things that, take her or leave it, they may help you." And it was kind of a little humbling for me because he's my client, right? And here I am opening up about the very intimate nature of Heritage Films, the business, not the emotional side of it. I got that stuff down, but it is still a business. But I did. I called him, and I said, "Dave, you offered, and I'm happy to open up. This is a very vulnerable feeling." And he just kind of laughed, and it turns out that he's mentored lots of other business owners over the decades, and he was very familiar in this space. And he's made the offer to lots of people, and he said, "I offer it to a lot of people where I see potential, but most of them don't call." He said that the fact that you called, I know you're serious about this.
Yeah.
The first little piece of advice he gave me, Kevin, he established that I am passionate about my company, not because I love it, but because I believe in it. I believe from hundreds of feedback from hundreds of films we've done, from the families, when they tell me how profound, how amazing, how it reconnected, how it built, I've got the positive feedback I need. And that little voice in us, the imposter syndrome that's in us always, was able to get shut down because of feedback from other people. And so when he says you care about the business, you need you need to care to the bit. You need to put that care into the business. If you care about it, then you have to charge for everything. You have to. He just gave me a whole bunch of tips of saying it's got to be a business. He's basically what he's saying is your care, your passion, your love, that ain't going to go away just because you add some rigor to your business, just because you add some processes beyond your interview process. And then, so he gave me some tips and we went about that. And then I said, literally, I felt so corny, but I said, hey, can you just straight up mentor me? Like, you know about business, you sold your company for a bunch of commas. I need help. I want you to help me. And he laughed. He said, of course, call me anytime. So now this has been going on for a couple of years now, and it has helped me so much. And a funny thing I recognized after maybe our 10th call, he never tells me to do anything. He never tells me a solution. He just asks questions. And by asking around, he's going to get me to come to the answer that he could have told me. But if he had told me, I wouldn't have done it.
Yeah.
I would, you have to make the discoveries yourself. And a good mentor knows that. Good mentor, it's not advice, it's questions for you to discover.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's Dave Stern, and he's a stud.
That is awesome. Yeah, I have a coach, if I guess I call him a coach, mentor, what have you. And he's the same way. He's really good at asking really good questions,
Yeah.
that just gets you to think and just gets you in. For me, it just gets me in alignment with who I am and how I want to show up anyways.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And everything revolves around that. And as long as we are in alignment, then you know what, the other stuff, we attract the right clients, we attract the right people, we attract, I mean, all the other stuff just comes when we're in alignment.
Right.
And and it's that a lot of entrepreneurs, they don't have that alignment. And so then they're lacking clarity on, like, even who their best client is, whatever. They're lacking that clarity because they don't have the alignment. Their business, what they're doing, is not in alignment with them. Maybe it's causing them to have to do a bunch of things that they don't really want to be doing, or
Yeah.
showing up in a way that they don't really want to show up. That I, and I hear that all the time from entrepreneurs, that, like, man, I just kind of show up how I feel I should show up in a given situation, versus I just show up and be me.
Yeah.
And
Man, I to those people, having having been through that some, the advice I would give them, I don't know, as advice, take it or leave it. But once I became a slave to my goals, my company, what I want this company to do because of the feedback from families, because like I have a moral obligation to market and to tell people about it because I believe that it's better for them.
yeah,
Once I got to that point, saying no to other things becomes a lot easier. That's how you'll know you're on the right path,
yeah,
is when saying no to something that maybe you kind of feel obligated, but if it's not in just perfect alignment with your goals and strategies, it's like, I don't want to go to that wedding. You don't want, if you could see inside my head, you wouldn't even want me there. So with regrets, I'm going to be mailing a gift. That is that's
and you just did
yeah,
everybody a favor.
yeah, totally. It's yes, it's true.
Yeah,
I,
for
you know,
sure.
I, I should probably, I should probably answer that question, the relationship question, with a very direct analog. There is no Heritage Films without this person. And that is, remember I told you my buddy asked me to film his dad? So I spent time in radio. This guy and I we were competitors running different sports radio stations at the time. And we were friends. And he also has a show. He's a talk show host. And he asked me, his name's Michael Berry, and he asked me to film his dad. I'm like, dude, what's wrong with your dad? He's like, dude, nothing, man. He's turning 75, and you know, like, the kids, I want them to know their papa. Can I just talk to him about growing up in East Texas and just set the camera up and chit chat with him for a little bit? And I said, all right. Well, that's what turned into the first Heritage Films. And then about a year later, my stepdad uh, told us at Thanksgiving that he had stage 4 pancreatic cancer.
Wow.
And I said, and I had done a couple of those films. First one being Michael's father, and then he talked about it on air, so a few people tracked me down, and I'd done a couple more. And I said, hey, I've done some of these little biography type things after the tears a few days later. Can you sit down and just share your background, your family story? And he said, sure. Well, I sure the hell couldn't do it because I cry talking to everybody. But, but Michael did it, and he owned a country music club at the time that had a really nice green room. And so they told him he had 12 to 18 months to live. And this was 2 months later. We finally were able to coordinate Michael and Sam, my stepdad. Well, we showed up, set the cameras up. They did the interview on Tuesday, and Sam passed away Sunday.
Wow.
It was 2 months, not a year. And it was about a week later. We're at the viewing, sitting in Michael's Tahoe, drinking bourbon, which is classless, but that's what we were doing. And Michael's a dude that's always just funny and playful and silly, but in a very, very sober moment, he's like, Chance, because he's the one that did the interview. He got to be the guy talking to this person, to my stepdad. And he's like, you should give this a go. Like, I think there's a company. I think that people want this. And I said, yeah, my wife and I thought that too, but he's like, just do it. Just freaking do it. So after the funeral, I talked to my wife and she's like, let's try, baby. And we launched the company. And that is a very direct, how did a relationship with a person change your life?
Yeah.
That is a direct analog. Michael Berry told me to start this company and I started it. And now there's something like more than 800 films, close to 1,000 families around the country have this life on a USB stick.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
So what year did you start the company, Chance?
15.
15. Okay.
Yep. 10
Okay.
years. So
So
all that predated that by a little bit. Mr. Berry is now 85, doing fine. So yeah, I kind of know by how old my buddy's dad is. So we're just
yeah,
over 10 years in.
yeah, yeah.
Been some rocky spots, we film older people I say I've done films of people younger than me, which is crazy. But for the most part, 60 to 100 years old, 60 to 100 years old. The COVID era was a little scary when you couldn't be around old people, and I film old people for a living. So that was we've had some challenges, but it's all there's plenty of people out there that care about their family, and we're gonna be here for a long time.
Yeah. 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 Wow. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to have this conversation today, Chance, because my goal for this podcast from the time we launched it 3 years ago is always remained static, and it's twofold. I want to give you, the guest, the opportunity to honor a person or persons who's been just so instrumental, so valuable in your life, in your business. And on the other side, for our listeners, who they too are entrepreneurs, founders, and CEOs, I just want to use these stories to inspire them to place an intentional focus on creating more real, meaningful, rewarding, and profitable relationships in their own lives. And Chance, with your help, we definitely delivered on that today. And
Oh,
so thank you so much. And for anybody that might be listening to this going, man, Kev, yeah, you're right. You guys delivered. And man, I love Chance. I love how he shows up. I'm really curious to know more about what they do. How can they find out more, Chance? Any websites, any resources we can share with folks?
sure. My website, I have websites now, plural. Yourheritagefilm.com
Okay.
and farmandranchfilms.com. But I'll tell you, it's the same thing. It's just on farm and ranch, it means the land is a part of the story. Generally, it's multi-generational. Farms and ranches is who those folks are. But, and even beyond that, beyond reaching out to me and hiring us, I encourage people to get, you can do this yourself. Like, ours is really pretty and it's great cameras and there's professionals doing everything. But at the root of it is the stories and those values that are all inside your dad's head or your mom's head or your aunt's head. Just talk to them. Just have an honest conversation and say, hey, do you mind if I film it vertical, you Neanderthal? I don't care, do whatever. But record it. It means the world to people that somebody cares about them and cares about how they think. To What an honor. Put yourself in their shoes. Here comes somebody that's younger than you saying, hey, there's something about you that's special. I don't know what it is, but is it okay if we visit for a little bit? And I want to talk to you about your growing up and your family.
Yeah.
They're gonna say yes.
Yeah.
And you're gonna do them such a service, and yet you're the one that receives the benefit.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that includes when you're staying at a hotel and you go down to the bar or you go hang out, talk to the people with white hair and just visit with them. They're so much cooler than we are, Kevin.
Yeah. 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 A wealth and a lifetime of experiences, And it is. It's really, really powerful for sure. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Well, Chance, once again, thank you so much for taking the time to have this conversation today. Really appreciate it and really appreciate you.
Thank you, Kevin. I really appreciate you. Love what you do. And I love how you get, like, I've done a whole lot of podcasts, and my specific piece of appreciation for you and what you're doing is you allow the people on the other side of the camera, the other side of the conversation, to talk about the people that they love and care about, and to acknowledge that, dude, however successful you are, there's other people that you owe it to. And this lets us say, dude, thank you, Jacko. Thank you, Dave. And thank you, Michael Berry. So thank you, Kevin, for letting me do that.
Absolutely.